Yo, how's it going everybody? You got Sketch here and welcome back to the channel. On this episode we're checking out a game that I was immediately hyped on when I heard it being announced. Detroit's dystopian mascot is back with a first-person shooter that nails the fan service for those that have known the franchise for a while, and newcomers can see just how insane 80s and 90s cinema truly was through a modern lens. We're looking at RoboCop Rogue City, developed by Teyon and published by Nacon, releasing to the PS5, Xbox Series, and PC in November of 2023. This is the same development team that released Terminator Resistance in 2019 and 2014's infamous Rambo the video game. So how does this compare? Well, spoiler alert, 2 out of the 3 games are straight up gas, and hint, it isn't Rambo the video game. The story goes a bit like this. Alex Murphy returns in a new installment of the series that almost completely erases what happens in RoboCop 3. A new gang has risen from the ashes of Kane's nuke empire known as the Torchheads, and they've hijacked the newsroom of Channel 9, and RoboCop hits the scene. As you go to apprehend the perps, your wiring goes berserk, and as you get to the bottom of the new Kingpin, you begin to unravel a long trail of deceit and learn of OCP's Project Afterlife, which takes the brains of the deceased and turns them into machines much like yourself. RoboCop and those around him begin to question, is he still a man that can think, or a machine that can only act? Do you stick to the prime directives, or do you go with your gut? Gameplay wise, you've got a first person shooter where you traverse the streets of Detroit while stomping out crime from parking tickets and beyond as you go through several iconic areas and locations seen in the movie franchise and even a couple from the short-lived television show. You remember that time that RoboCop shot that dude in the junk? Well, you can recreate that scene to your heart's content and get an achievement for it. You'll get several missions per area with main and side quests to complete to get upgrade points and potentially a better connection to the community or to OCP depending on your choices. You've got the iconic Auto 9 with bottomless ammunition, and you can pick up weapons that enemies drop ranging from pistols, shotguns, light machine guns, and that insane 50 cal sniper rifle from RoboCop 1. You can also pick up enemies and toss them like the morning paper, and you can get creative with how you want to go about each encounter. When all else fails, you can punch enemies and send them flying across the room, and that punch is satisfying. You'll gain upgrade points for yourself from the Auto 9 throughout the game, and these are pretty extensive, letting you raise your damage, mobility, defense, and all the things you would expect. However, the further into those skill trees you get, the crazier these things start to get. For example, you can emit a shockwave that affects all enemies around you, including bosses, or make the Auto 9 to a fully automatic gore cannon, obliterating enemies like smashing fruit with a sledgehammer. There's also a bullet time perk that lets you line up headshots with ease, and this never gets old. You've also got detective mode that will outline items of interest in green, letting you track footsteps and other various clues in each area. This will steer you towards vehicles to ticket, potential suspects, and the like. You've also got citizens to interact with, from innocent bystanders to those in need of help or quick sentencing. There's also a fair amount of dialogue options and iconic characters like your partner Lewis and Sergeant Reed, along with a lot of new recruits and characters to interact with in each area. Once you complete the main objective, you can move on to the next area and progress the day cycle. The side quests are not required but will get you tons of bonus XP and can at times tip the scale with community impressions. However, if you leave the area before completing them, you can't come back to it later. You will also encounter a lot of ops, many of which are featured in the films, and these battles will get heated. While you're a walking tank, the game can straight up peel you at times, especially before you start getting your upgrades. The ED-209 encounters are sick, and the eventual showdown with Kane is a challenging and really fun boss fight that damn near puts you in that final scene of RoboCop 2. The difficulty is pretty fair for the most part, but once you start filling out your build, you can make RoboCop insanely overpowered. What's even better, since a recent update, New Game Plus mode has been added so you can carry over all of your skill points for yourself and the Auto 9 over to a fresh run. This is the victory lap that was missing at launch, but now that it's here, you have more incentive to run the game again on the higher difficulties, or just max out your build and literally demolish everything in front of you. Graphics wise, RoboCop Rogue City runs on the Unreal Engine 5 and was developed in partnership with MGM Pictures. This allowed developer Teyon to use all the set pieces in nearly one-to-one detail from the films, and just about every location is here, from Alex Murphy's past apartment, the warehouse district, and even the arcade where Officer Duffy gets thrown into a midnight resistance machine. Environments are extensive, giving you a lot of ground to cover as you wish, with active missions being linear guiding you towards the objectives. Waypoints will move you to the prime and secondary directives, and you can scan the area for collectibles and evidence to pick up along the way. As you progress in the game's narrative, you also get these almost fear-type moments where Alex Murphy is visited by echoes of the past, and these parts are pretty sick to play through. Character models are also pretty good, with a few of the actors returning to reprise their roles like Peter Weller, and just about all the iconic characters from the series that are supposed to be there look about the same as they did back in the films. The new characters that are introduced all make sense in the universe, and the added challenge of keeping it in good graces with some people will affect how the game ends. The look of everything is absolutely absolutely nailed here, and it's about as wild as you would expect with the gore. Especially once you add certain upgrades to your build, the gameplay will look very close to the RoboCop unrated version. And if you know the difference between that cut and the theatrical cut, you know just how awesomely absurd the effects work gets. Facial animations don't look half bad here either, with some pretty sharp likenesses to that of the original cast. While some are a bit better than others, overall, they're decent. Though there are some spots where the graphics do falter a bit, and the screen does tear in the console build, producing flickering in some of the backgrounds and cutscenes. While facial animations are great on some characters, there's others where they look a little bit out of sync. Same applies to animations, which again, there's some great ones in here, but there's also some rough ones too. While there's no game crashing bugs that I encountered, there are some visual and audio bugs that have yet to be ironed out since the time of this recording. Loading times are relatively fast here too, but it does employ some of the same habits that Outriders did, like the fade to black screen that's often within the same scene. While these are all minor to moderate nitpicks, it doesn't really take away from the game much, but if these bits were ironed out just a touch more, this will be a grand slam. Sound-wise, RoboCop Rogue City has some peaks and valleys, but luckily nothing too severe as far as valleys. The RoboCop theme song is in there a couple times, along with a piano rendition at the title screen. Soot from the Torchheads gang also has a chart-topping single that you just heard in a healthy chunk of the game, and there's also a few backing ambient tunes and orchestral tunes that create tension similar to those heard in the OG films too. Dialogue is also plentiful, with a lot of conversation between RoboCop, the citizens, and colleagues of Detroit. You typically get a handful of dialogue options to run through when speaking with other characters, and when the dialogue is predetermined, these can be several minute long segments, which is not a bad thing, feeling like you're actually in a RoboCop movie, writing and all. As mentioned earlier, Peter Weller is back in the role as RoboCop, and it's great to hear his voice again alongside a few others. Dialogue has the same feel as the movies, and new characters carry the torch fairly well compared to the established cast. The amount of new and recurring one-liners is about what you'd expect, with just about all those memorable quotes from the franchise in there, from the heroes and the villains, and you damn right I'd buy that for $1. Weapon audio also cooks here, with some great weapon feedback on most of the guns, only a couple of which are slightly underwhelming compared to the damage they dish out. The Auto 9 of course sounds just like the film and barks like a junkyard dog, and most weapons follow suit. The AUG and the 50 cal, however, sound surprisingly quiet considering both are featured in the films, and the 50 cal should sound like a thunderclap. The shotguns also again sound a bit quiet, even though next to the Auto 9, those are some of the best weapons in the game. Despite some audio balancing, the shot audio is solid overall. Speaking of balancing, there are a couple places where the audio mixing goes a bit sideways with character dialogue and sound effects. Sometimes it sounds like the engineers just slide the faders almost completely off, having some characters and sound effects too low compared to everything else. Luckily, subtitles fill in all the dialogue verbatim so you don't miss anything, but it's a strange audio bug that is yet to be ironed out, even with the introduction of New Game Plus. To sum it all up, RoboCop Rogue City is awesome. It's a game where you can literally become RoboCop and do RoboCop shit. From the minor task of helping out citizens in the ranks among you, you're also blasting the ops and OCP tech into oblivion, all set to an astoundingly faithful recreation of old Detroit. RoboCop fans will certainly pick up on all the references, since this team did their homework on the franchise, and since the arcade games and RoboCop vs. Terminator, this is a front runner. Along with the recently added New Game Plus mode, you have incentive to run the game multiple times, and it's recommended to go for the higher settings since you literally are just that powerful, and the higher difficulty settings can balance out that challenge a bit. RoboCop Rogue City gets an 8 out of 10 and comes highly recommended for shooter fans and fans of the RoboCop franchise. This takes all the memorable bits of the series and puts you in the role. While it's not perfect from a technical standpoint, it is a lot of fun to roam around Detroit and stand on business. The one-liners and quotes from the films are a great callback to 80s and 90s cinema, and to see it modernized with so much detail is rad. If you're looking for a fun diversion from all the mainline shooters on the market currently, this is a fantastic option even at retail price. As it goes on, if you can find a copy of this on sale, it's even more worth it, since the more you level your character, the more insane your runs will get. And if you made it this far into the video, thank you so much for watching. If you find these videos helpful, that's awesome. I'm glad you use it as a resource. Check back often. We'll have more reviews and commentaries coming up in the near future. But until then, take it easy and stay safe out there. I'll see you on the next one.